Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep the Mining podcast. And today's guest, should I say, is Ivan Fairhall, who's Director and CEO of Mawson Gold, a TSX-listed gold exploration company in two safe Tier 1 mining-friendly jurisdictions, which is in Finland and Sweden. Ivan is a chartered engineer and mine finance professional with over 15 years of mining industry experience. And he's going to talk about Mawson Gold, but also how junior mining companies operate in quite a nuanced world where projects, strategy and market timing need to work in obviously harmony. So for all those junior miners out there, it's definitely worth an episode worth listening to. So that's welcome to Ivan to the podcast. How you doing, Ivan?
Yeah, great, Rob. Nice to be on.
Yeah, appreciate your time as well. So wondered if you can tell our audience a little bit about yourself, about your career, before we go into speaking about Mawson Gold.
Yeah, sure. Well, great to be on the show, and I guess like probably many of your listeners, my career's been a windy road that takes you on a bit of a journey that you don't necessarily set out to go, but it brings you right to where you are at any point in time. And I started my career as I studied mechanical engineering at university, and so I'm an engineer by background, and I went into quite a conventional type consulting role and being based going to university in Australia, and the sort of the age that I graduated, the mining industry was booming, and I found my way into the world of mining, and I was working for a company called Hatch, and we were really designing and construction, doing sort of late stage EPCM type work for the big mining projects in Australia, BHP, and a lot of coal work, and manganese and remote sites and all of that kind of mining boom, Australian mining boom type stuff. And after a few years of doing that, I went traveling and wound up in the UK, in your homeland, where I got stuck for many years, I must say. And I was working in the first part of that time as a consultant. I did a lot of study work, really focusing on more at the junior end of the spectrum, working for typically single asset junior mining companies, helping them take their project and really their resource and trying to come up with a business case that makes sense. And so right from the quintessential geologist stumbling out of the jungle with some rocks and what are we going to do, how we develop a project, right through to sort of more later stage feasibility studies and feed studies and really conditioning projects for financing and for the market. Now I've moved from that into an investor role. I was working for a private equity fund that was really looking at those types of companies and looking to invest in them. So sort of flipped from the sell side to the buy side, I suppose. And then from that role, I did that for 5 years. And then from that role, I moved now to my current role, which is the CEO of Mawson Gold. So taking a lot of those skills that I picked up along the way and bringing them to bear in the junior mining world.
Yeah. Obviously, before we went live, we were speaking about living in the UK, and obviously you lived here for quite a while. If any Australians are listening, or it doesn't even necessarily need to be any Australians, what did you learn by coming to work in the UK that you may have not been able to experience if you continue living in Australia?
Yeah, look, I think the UK is quite a different environment to work in. Culturally, it's just quite different. I suppose I was fortunate. I probably had a soft landing working in mining, because mining's full of expats, and I the places that I worked were generally pretty diverse. But the opportunities to be in the UK, you're connected much better to the world, I would say, in terms of geographical location as well as networks. Africa, Europe, the US are they're really a chip and a putt away from the UK, London, being a global hub. You can fly anywhere in the world in 2 flights, as they used to say. And yeah, it puts you at the center of a lot of things. It's a center of finance, and it is a geographical center. And I think there's a lot of opportunities in the UK for that reason.
So moving on, just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about Mawson Gold.
Yeah, sure. So Mawson Gold is an exploration and development company. We've got a number of assets in our portfolio, but the flagship asset we have is called the Rajapalot project. It's located in northern Finland, right on the Arctic Circle, in Finnish Lapland, the home of Santa Claus. Some of your listeners may have been dragged there by their kids for over the years, but it's a great place to do business. Finland is an excellent part of the world: infrastructure, education, very first world in every respect, and a fantastic people to work with. And so what we have up there is a gold discovery. We've got over 1 million ounces of gold and with a cobalt credit in Finland, and that project is growing. There's a significant amount of exploration upside, but we're also doing a PEA on it to sort of start to articulate, what does 1 million ounces look like in this part of the world, and sort of draw out some of those factors around its location, as well as our deposit in particular. It's how it's made up, and where it is. And look to bring them out in an economic sense, as we continue, obviously, to explore the exploration upside. We know the deposit will get bigger; it's open, and also will grow. We've got a very large land package, significant prospectivity that deserves a lot more follow up. So that's our main project. We have another exploration project, earlier stage in Sweden, a great part of the world. In terms of mining, where this project is in the Skellefteå, a lot of existing mining, 7 million ounces, and Boliden, a big mining company, their namesake mine is this from there. And we've made a gold discovery down there, but it's early days, so we're doing some work down there. And the third part of our business is actually something that we've spun out recently. We've spun off some gold exploration company down into Australia called Southern Cross Gold, and we're really now just a shareholder. But Southern Cross is quite an exciting story, doing very well down in Australia, and we're a very happy shareholder in that company as well.
Is there much difference in I suppose doing business or working in the mining industry in Finland to Sweden? Obviously, they're both sort of, I suppose, Scandinavian and Northern Hemisphere countries. Is there a lot of difference between mining in each of those jurisdictions?
Look, obviously, each country, each jurisdiction anywhere in the world really has its own regulatory nuances and how you go through the process of your licensing and permitting, getting access to your ground, and how you manage work programs in compliance with those regulations they all have their differences. So local knowledge is key, and having good local people helping you and really managing those programs for you is important. But I would say, relative to the rest of the world, they're very similar. The Finns and Swedes might disagree with this statement, but I do think that culturally they have some, quite a lot of similarities, and I think that they're both very much first world jurisdictions. The people are incredibly well educated and productive and autonomous, and very trustworthy. And so in terms of managing a business with work being done in both jurisdictions, they're both similarly good, I would say.
You've moved through lots of obviously different parts of the mining life cycle. What has been your big takeaways from working in those various parts of a mining life cycle? And I suppose where are we in a mining life cycle at the moment?
Yeah, sure. I've sort of thought a lot about this recently, actually, and I sort of reflected that but mining's more than just the technical merits of something, and it's not black and white. Certainly, junior mining's not black and white, and those sort of black and white technical facts don't necessarily dictate your fortune. And I was actually reading an article by James Dyson the other day, and he in fact opened a building or something, and instead of calling it STEM, science, technology, maths, he calls it STEAM, and the A is for art. And it's the softer issues that need to go hand in hand with the harder issues that I think is what makes these technical things a success. And so if I look at sort of my career, I sort of went through a bit of a progression, and I started as an engineer, and I genuinely thought that the success of these companies was down very much to the technical merits of the project, the grade, the recovery, the costs, the NPVs, the CapEx, the IRR, these sort of hard facts, and the best of those in aggregate, they would be the projects that were successful. And that dictated 90 plus 95% of it. Then I moved into the world of the investor, and I was fund manager, and thinking probably on a much longer scale, thinking a lot more strategically. We looked a lot about how to build a business, and how to think about the capital markets and the strategy, and constructing teams, and making sure you had the right team in place, and what message were you sending to strategic investors, strategic acquirers, how you're going to sort of monetize your stake in this business. And it's a very different perspective. You obviously had to look back at the technical things, they all matter, but then you layer on this sort of more strategic thinking and a different lens that you look through it. And then I moved from that to now being a CEO and managing one of these companies. And I do spend a lot of my time thinking about the market and the macro environment and perception and optics around how the business is being run and communicated, and the strategy, and getting momentum at the right times, and you keeping your powder dry. And so, you have to, those things dilute the project in its significance. You definitely have to have a good project. Absolutely. There's no denying that, but you can't have none of the other things either. And these things have to sort of be in balance and work in unison. And I used to use the example, and I think it's true, that, you've got good teams that drag average projects kicking and screaming into success and into production, and sell for lots of money, and are successes. And equally, I'm sure we all have seen good projects that have been sort of messed up and wasted by teams that are not right, not engaged, not sort of really not on it. And so you've got to have them all in balance. You can't have none of any of them. You can't have all of one of them. You have to have them all in balance, but they all matter. So I think that's really been my takeaway from my career, and is an important part of how I think about what we do in Mawson.
Yeah. Talk about from a obviously macro sense. I've heard you mention uncontrollable factors. So I just wondered if you could just tell us a little bit more around that.
Yeah, well, obviously there's the fourth element to sort of project and strategy, and that's the things that are very much outside of your control, and that's largely the macro, and they have a bearing on a lot of what you do at those earlier levels. You've got to think of, it's a cyclical business. Mining, everyone knows that mining's a cyclical business, and timing's everything. And so as a board and as a CEO, you need to sort of respond and be sensitive to the macro environment, use it to your advantage. Don't try and fight it. Don't try and push water uphill. Use the example, you could go out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's no end amount of money that you could go and spend on investor relations and promotion for these companies. But, if no one's listening, you sort of blow, you're pushing water uphill a little bit, and equally go and blow your brains out, drilling holes and spending a lot of money on higher risk activities when there's no certainty that you could, replenish that capital. You need to be able to raise money to survive, and you need to keep these companies funded. So I think it's just being sensitive to that macro environment, commodity pricing and investor sentiment, and making sure that your strategy is matching that.
Yeah. Obviously, with uncontrollable events, is there a way that you can help prepare yourself for the unexpected? Obviously, that's a pretty broad question. But from your experience and working through the life cycle, what is the best way to maybe prepare for some of these uncontrollable events?
Yeah, sure. Look, having a quality asset base is sort of key to enduring through the cycles. You know, there's the old saying that all boats rise on a high tide, and that sort of thing. And you see in certain times in the market when things are really good, you get projects dusted off from bottom shelves and promoted back into the market, and these tend to be the first to fall away when things don't go so good. So set yourself up. Invest in quality projects or have quality projects, and you should have some longevity through the cycle. And then the other one is team. At the end of the day, this is, nothing goes according to plan ever in mining. And so what matters is how you respond to change. And so if you've got a good team and a good project, then you tend to be able to deal with the things that come your way. And you've just got to sort of hope that you can manage the issues as they arise.
So where is the balance with Mawson today?
Yeah, so look, I think on that level, we've got a good project. We've got a good project, and it's getting better as it grows and as we articulate not just what it was as an exploration project, now what it actually looks like as a project and as a mine, rather than looking at it as a resource, looking at it as a mine. And that's sort of the purpose of the PEA, is really to help people understand the deposit better. Not all deposits are created equal. 1 million ounces over there is different. They're all different. And so what makes them different and what makes a project successful is a function of how you develop it and how it operates. What are the costs? What are the sort of mining productivities? What's the infrastructure like in that part of the world? What is the hurdle to build a project? Do you need to build roads and pipelines and all those things? And maybe as an engineer, I look at the project and I can sort of start to see those things, but quickly. But investors don't have the time to go through and look at your resource and make assumptions around, what's big enough, or what's it going to take to develop this project. And so I think that these economic studies are helpful to bring all of these things together and articulate the project in a coherent way and you build a business case. So that's where we're at with the project level, and I think that the PEA also helps us with our exploration story. We know that the project's going to get a lot bigger. We know that there's a lot more to find, but allocating capital and making sure we understand, well, what's the return on that investment, and having a project with a particular production profile, we can add resources and we can very quickly start to monetize and start to understand the value that gets added from exploration upside. And so the NPV, the project sort of helps us, having a PEA, I should say, helps us understand what exploration upside really means to us. And then, of course, just come back to the points we've been talking about, recognize the sort of dynamic macro environment that we're in at the moment. Prices are volatile, they're down at the moment. Things have changed quickly, but really what we've got to do is focus on the things that are inside our control, exercise sort of capital discipline in our strategy. What is it we're spending money on? Where are we saving money? What are the right things to do next to add value? And really focus adding value to our assets. The pricing tends to work out over the long term. It's really, work on the NAV, the NPV of the project, and the price, the thing that the market will give you for that asset. That will change over time, but as long as you've got focus on building the value, then that's really the main thing that you can control.
Southern Cross is an interesting situation. How did you come about that?
Yeah, sure. It is an interesting situation. It's a great story, actually, in how value has been created in a non-obvious way, and it was a journey in and of itself. So Mawson acquired some projects down in Australia about 2 years ago, some exploration assets in Victoria at a time when attention was really coming back to Victoria based on the success of the Fosterville, Agnico Eagle's Fosterville mine, which was and still is the highest grade gold mine in the world, and one of the biggest gold mines in the world as well, and in an area that had been sort of forgotten as mining had moved to Western Australia. And the Victorian goldfields, which was a real gold rush era, built Australia in a lot of sense, had been forgotten for lots of sort of reasons, and Agnico really opened that back up with the Fosterville mine, now owned by Agnico, really opened that up. And so we had some exploration projects down there. We spent some money on them, and we made what was a really great discovery in Sunday Creek. And but when we were putting results out, no one sort of cared. We're a TSX-listed company. We've got a big shareholder base that's followed us for a long time with our Finnish project, and I think people were a little bit confused. They didn't understand the Victorian opportunity. I don't know exactly why, but we were like, this doesn't make sense. This is really great. This is a really great discovery. And so we made the decision to spin that out. We've listed Southern Cross on the ASX down in a market that has investors that understand the story and willing to follow it. We raised $11.8 million down there over 2 fundraisers and including the IPO, and we created a dedicated vehicle with a dedicated management team, a strategy, and investor base that all were really focused on the opportunity to hand and primed it for success. Didn't have overhang. It had the right structure, and it had the right sort of bespoke IR strategy around it. And then when drilling continued and drill results came out post the IPO, we delivered good results, or Southern Cross delivered good results, 119 meters at 3.9 grams a ton. It really took off, and that was a function of the way that it was structured and put together. We took something that no one cared about, put it in a different environment with not a different strategy, but certainly a different sort of setup, and the market really took care. So it took really the similar value, but we've ended up with a much different price outcome, and the market likes what it sees, and so do we. So we're sort of quite pleased with how that's played out.
Yeah. So what does it mean for Mawson Gold to have that project in your portfolio?
Yeah, well, quite simply, I'm a pretty happy CEO of Mawson to be owning 60% of what is a really exciting story down in Australia. It is a little curious, but therein lies the opportunity that we're getting little to no value for our stake in Southern Cross, it would seem, and our stake in Southern Cross, it is escrowed for 2 years, but based on its valuation is effectively worth all of Mawson. So we now have a negative EV, and I think that just shows that is a really interesting investment opportunity that it's normally a good place to start. Let's say we have quality assets in Finland, and you can kind of get them for free in one sense, and so that is curious that value is not being recognized, but it certainly is the opportunity and why people should pay attention. And so where does that leave Mawson in terms of how we take this forward? If I go back to sort of some of the themes we've been talking about here, I suppose is the engineer says to me that we've got at the project level things are doing well. We're building fundamental value in our business. We've got a good project at Rajapalot. We've got a new discovery in Sweden, and we've got this really exciting big shareholding down in Australia. So that side's all doing quite well, I would say. The investor in me looks at that as an investment proposition, and you've got a lot of value, but we're trading at a very deep discount. So the sum of the parts valuation is really quite compelling, and there's a narrative there that you can build around wealth creation by being able to communicate that and unlock that value that's sort of latent in the business. And then I put my CEO hat on there, and really it says to me that we've just got to work hard and get out there and get the story out there, and wear the shoe leather off and make sure people understand just what that investment opportunity is. So plenty of work to do, but I think we've got the right pieces in place in the sense of the asset quality and a plan to get that message out there.
Yeah. So concluding, what's the outlook or plan of action for the remainder of this year going into 2023? And do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So look, the plan really is we're in the midst of our PEA, so it's keeping the team really busy as we work with the consultants to sort of excuse me, pull together the technical work and be able to explain to the market what the project really means. We've got exploration programs ongoing and more work to do over the summer and then leading into the winter at both the Rajapalot project and in Sweden. So sort of lots of news to come out yet, and working hard on explaining the story better, building value and explaining the story better. Obviously Southern Cross is well funded, and Mawson indirectly benefits from good news to come out of there. So lots of work to do, but yeah, shaping up as being an exciting second half of the year. And look, I suppose in terms of concluding remarks, obviously take a look at Mawson. I would say that obviously as the CEO, but we are in an interesting market. But I suppose timing, markets are cyclical, and timing, those things change over time, and who tends to be rewarded is those people that created value at the asset level, and focused inward on the things that they can control. Markets will turn like they always do, and plenty of opportunity remains. Yeah,
well, it looks like you got a busy summer and winter, or winter and summer, depending where you are in the world. So wish you well for the remainder of the year going into next year. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they've got any questions, how can they go about doing that? What social media platforms are you on and the company on?
Yeah, sure. The company's on all the main ones: Twitter, LinkedIn, and you can find interviews with me on YouTube and whatnot. And if you want to reach out to the company directly, probably best to go info@mawsongold.com. That goes to my inbox, so it's no big mysterious department that it goes to, but I'll make sure that the right person is able to, we can get the right information for people if they want to know more about the story.
Yeah, certainly. We can include those in the show notes accompanying this podcast, or if you're watching on the YouTube channel, they will be posted below. So really appreciate your time, Ivan. Perhaps you can come on later this year, or more likely next year, with some further updates on Mawson and what you're doing with Southern Cross as well. So I'm sure our audience will be interested in listening to what's been happening going into 2023.
Yep, sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on, Rob.
Yeah, no worries. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Couple of obviously exciting projects there in Finland and Sweden, and obviously the Southern Cross down in Australia. So appreciate your continued support. Again, really appreciate you sharing episodes to others around the world, no matter where you are, but whether it's people in the mining industry or even people outside the mining industry that may be looking to potentially invest. Here's obviously a company that would need some support and maybe a company that you could follow. So again, appreciate your continued support and appreciate you sharing this episode and other episodes amongst friends, family, others around the world. So yeah, until next time, happy mining.